The Holy Bible, the book of all books, the book of all the truths that no one should question, the pedestal of Christianity itself, the book that claimed that everything written in there, from A to Z, is entirely accurate, the book heavenly inspired, written by over 40 men across 2,000 years, counting over 60 books, the only thing which backs up the idea of God himself, the only place where God seems to be powerful but not in real life. In order for that God idea to remain true, the Bible has to be all true. And in order for the Bible to be all true, not even one of its 66 books should contain even the slightest lie, because this would be way enough to make the whole thing collapse. Because if you mean to claim that something is all true, you cannot then afford yourself to miss out on even the slightest detail. Every single thing has to click in without forcing it. Not a single mistake, a single inaccuracy or inconsistency should be written in its pages. At least that's one of the biggest fantasies of the believers. Unfortunately for them, there are so many lies and inconsistency in that book that we wonder how could that be possibly inspired by an all-knowing God. There are so many lies and exaggerations in that book, we wonder if it holds even 1% of truth. In this video, we're about to answer this ultimate question: why the Bible is fiction. The Noah's Ark story. The Bible claims that all our animals originate from the Noah's Ark after the flood, which means all of our birds, insects, pets, livestock, and wild animals were on that boat made of wood which floated over high waters for 150 days. This is one of the most ridiculous things ever written. Bear with me. Today, we count about 7.7 million animal species in the world, which means in order for all these animals to really come from Noah's Ark, bro had to put on board 15 million of them on his wooden boat. 15 million animals! We're not even talking about the birds yet. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Well, for you to have a real grasp of what I'm talking about, let's take a look at this video I made recently.
How big was the ark? 300 cubits long, he said. I made my research. 300 cubits are actually 510 feet, which appears quite long for some, but is it? Then to have a better understanding of it, I compared the ark to ships we already have knowledge of. You're not ready for what's coming. Stick with me. That's the ark compared to other real boats. So the ark was not so big after all, at least not big enough for what they claim it served for. Now I Google for him. How many land animal species are there? Exactly what you see is right. There are more than 5 million animal species of the ground. With this number, we can easily have an idea of how many animals there were on the ark, since God ordered Noah to take a pair of every living animals and birds, or maybe not, because when you read Genesis 7 verses 2, 3, it is no longer a pair of each animal that God asked him to take in, it's instead 7 pairs. The verse goes, "Take with you 7 pairs, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice." Read for yourself if you please. Anyway, I am not going to take this into account. So if we do a simple math, Noah had to put on the ark at least 10 million animals. A pair of elephant, giraffe, tiger, lion, cheetah, rhinoceros, gorillas, you name it. We're not even talking about the birds yet. A pair of elephants alone is about 10 tons. Let's be honest. Can you really imagine a wooden boat made by 2 men holding so much weight and has enough space for all of these? Remember folks, a wooden boat. There's no way that it can hold so much animals. No need to tell you how bad water would leak in with such an inward weight. Then I Googled for him. How many days Noah spent in the ark? 150 days. Oh my God. So not only Noah could fit so many animals on his piece of wood, but he could also stock enough water and enough food for all of them for 150 days, without forgetting that some of them are predators. How believable is that? Just use a little bit of logic and see for yourself, fam. And again I asked him, as it was raining crazily, Noah had to put a roof on the ark, right? He answered, yes, he had to cover it from everywhere for better chance of survival. So God asked him to put 1 window. Hold on, only 1 window. How do you expect more than 10 million creatures in Noah's family to breathe in a sealed boat with pee and poop smell, with only 1 window? The amount of air entering is largely too inferior to what's being consumed. I think you, believer, really need some science classes. And last question I asked the believer, how many lives did the flood wipe out from the surface of the earth? He said, millions of people had died in the flood. I replied, can you imagine millions of dead bodies all across the planet, but no evidence of them whatsoever? Where are these millions of corpses, Hein? Why we couldn't find them? Finally, he said, "Well, brother, archaeologists even found the place where the boat landed on the mountain." I said, "What place, brother? Show me." He showed me this. You see, he showed me this picture. Then I'm like, ooh, gosh, give me a break, brother. Just use a little bit of logic with me. The bottom of boat is shaped like that. Do you see well? Like that. So normally the trace of something like that would be a hole in the shape of a tub, like it smacked the ground open. But this one looks like the mark of rug, sir. No offense, honesty. Put the bias aside for a sec. Does this really look like the bottom of a boat to you? And furthermore, before you go thinking that the Noah's story is original, take a look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. They are two similar stories, except that the Epic of Gilgamesh was written way before the Noah's Ark. And one last thing, scientists even said that our planet Earth does not contain enough water, showing that it has been flooded as described in the Bible. The Noah's Ark is entirely fiction. The biblical story is being based on a much older myth originating in Sumeria and called the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's not possible to build an entire wooden boat of those dimensions without very significant problems of flexing and risks of breaking up due to structural load involved. Even the Wyoming, the largest wooden ship ever built, had major structural issues and had to have steam-driven pumps installed and run 24/7 to cope with the amount of water which was leaking in.
So please, let's be intellectually responsible for once, and stop taking for truth those tales written for toddlers. And moreover, when Noah's family got off the boat, after 150 days, on a completely deserted earth, with no trees and stinking corpses everywhere, what did they eat? How did they manage to clean earth out of all these dead, swollen, stinky bodies? As a matter of fact, this one alone should be enough to prove the Bible is fiction. But why stopping here when we can enjoy a little more? So in Joshua chapter 10, 5 kings joined their forces to launch an attack against the Israelites' army. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to withstand you." On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Joshua. Then the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. Apparently, Joshua wanted the day to last longer, so he asked God to stop the sun. But Jaja, you and your God should have known that it is the earth that rotates around the sun, and not the sun that rotates around earth. So if you wanted a longer day, you should have asked to stop the earth instead, not the sun. Although this would have been heavily chaotic for our poor earth. But come on, how could the sun just stop? God was fooled by nature. He saw the sun moving in the sky, so he started making up things. And in 2024, people be reading this and still be like, "Oh, what a miracle." Fiction Pro Max. Fiction Pro Max. At the Tower of Babel, the Bible claimed that is where all the languages originated from. According to the believers, all the spoken languages nowadays have their roots in that time when God confounded their languages because they were too united. Oh, by the way, God is asking out for union, but that same God is also dividing people because they are too united. Let me ask you 3 simple questions. First of all, how many people were at the Tower of Babel at that time? Well, the number is not exact, but when we sum up all the members of the 78 families on site, there were approximately 400 people there. Second of all, how many languages are spoken in the world today? The answer is more than 7,000. More than 7,000 languages are spoken throughout the world today. Now, question number 3. How could 400 people carry out 7,000 languages in the world? I repeat, how could 400 people carry out 7,000 languages in the world? I'm gonna let you find the answer alone. Meanwhile, the Tower of Babel is an origin myth and parable in the book of Genesis, meant to explain the existence of different languages and cultures. The story of the Tower of Babel? Fiction Ultra Pro Max. Oh, by the way, do y'all know, despite of all those lies and exaggeration, the Bible has more than 10 contradictions within its pages? Well, check out this video if you haven't yet. The fall of Jericho. The fall of Jericho was no fate of God. Well, I'm not gonna be too long on this one, just a simple research. Excavation at the biblical Jericho have failed to find any traces of the city at the relevant time, which has led to a consensus among scholars that the story has its origin in the nationalist propaganda of much later kings of Judah and their claims to the territory of the king of Israel. Fiction Super Ultra Pro Max. Do you think that the story of Jonah in the whale's belly is true? My bad, I thought you did. Like, how do you grown-up people have the intellectual courage to imagine as true a living person laying in the stomach of a whale for 3 days with no air, chilling there, alive? God damn it. Might as well tell me that he also played PlayStation and ate seafood in there, because at this point, you people are freaking lunatic to spit out the story as truth for advising purposes. Cushman Murphy, a scientist at the American Museum of Natural History and extremely knowledgeable about whales, he said that no man could survive in a whale any longer than he would if he were held on the water. No doubt the book was actually written in post-exilic era, perhaps the 5th century BCE, as a didactic story with theological messages. The book is a parable, fiction super ultra pumax. In the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, and Luke relate the story of Jesus on earth. We need to settle down on one thing. The New Testament is not a series, or should I say, the book of Matthew is not episode 1, and the book of Mark is not episode 2. Each book is a full movie, telling the story from beginning to end. So, we would expect from the writers to use different form of writings, but not to be messy on the details like numbers, date, places. So, why we cannot find a clear answer when we ask certain questions to these alleged writers? In order to help you understand what I mean, I filed a lawsuit for fallacy against them recently. So, let's watch them clashing in court.
Let's call the disciples of Jesus to the court. In the case of the Jesus' death and resurrection, some questions still remain objectively unanswered. Today, we call to the stand Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Mr. Matthew, introduce yourself to the public so they may know you better.
My name is Matthew. I'm illiterate. Means I don't know how to write and how to read. I wrote a book on my journey with Jesus. I was with him in the very end.
All right, Mr. Matthew, I am not going to pay attention to the fact you're illiterate and you wrote a book. We leave this for later. But now enlighten us, please, on how the Mary Magdalene found out Jesus was resurrected.
Well, I said it all in my book. After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men.
You are sure that it all went like you said?
100% sure, Your Honor.
What if I call your other fellows Mark and Luke? Will they have the same version?
Well, I think we all heard the same things.
Well, now let's call Mr. Mark to the stand. Mr. Mark, as you also walked with Jesus, can you tell us, please, how did the Mary Magdalene find out Jesus was resurrected?
As a matter of fact, very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away.
Excuse me, you said what?
The tomb was already opened.
The tomb was already opened. What about the angel who came down with an earthquake and rolled away the stone in front of the Marys?
There was no earthquake, Your Honor. When the Marys came, the tomb was already opened. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side.
But Matthew just affirmed to the court that the angel sat on the stone outside after the earthquake.
Your Honor, Matthew doesn't know what he is talking about. I wrote my book before him. You can ask Luke if you please.
Calm down, everybody. Come down, please. Let's all see what Mr. Luke has to say. Mr. Luke, please explain to the court, how did the Mary Magdalene find out Jesus was resurrected?
As everyone knows, I was not there. I only heard stories here and there.
Excuse me? You heard stories? So what the hell are you doing in the Bible then?
Please let me explain, Your Honor. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus.
So you're saying that Matthew was talking trash? There was no earthquake?
Exactly. There was no earthquake, Your Honor. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them.
2 men in lighting clothes? Matthew and Mark had just uttered that it was only one angel. How can it be one angel and 2 angels at the same time?
Your Honor, I am telling what I heard.
You guys are most likely going to jail tonight. Fortunately for you, I got one more question for you all. I hope you stop tripping on that one. Like, comment, and subscribe for episode X.
Do y'all see what I meant? They cannot even agree on some details. Matter of fact, they can't even state for fact how many days later Jesus ascended. One said 3 days later, the other said 40 days later. Then when you ask them where exactly they met with Jesus after his resurrection, one says they met in Galilee, the other said that Jesus appeared to them on the way to Emmaus, another said Jesus appeared to them and rebuked them as they were eating around the table. At this point, you can't even know which version is true, or if anything is true at all. And they exaggerated the story so much, they even made him resurrect. Why did Jesus need a body to go to heaven? Tell me, folks. I thought heaven was spiritual. Why that physical body? If he could have gone in heaven with a body, why he didn't just come down on earth with that body? Why he had to go through birth? Normally, spirits go to heaven, not bodies. But no, they wanted to magisterialize the fictional story, so they resurrected Jesus with their pen. There are so many other reasons I could mention there to prove you how fictional the Bible is. I'll probably need a part 2, but I think you get the hang of it. See you in the next video.